Hi. The same day I lowered my wife into the ground, my family was raising champagne glasses at my brother's wedding. They didn't just abandon me, they mocked me. And when they later tried to erase me from the family for good, I decided to play their game and win. I still remember standing by her casket, the silence pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't breathe under. The funeral home was empty, so quiet that every shuffle of my shoes echoed like a gunshot. I kept glancing at the door, hoping maybe my parents would change their minds. Maybe my brother would show up, even for 5 minutes. But nobody came. Not a single person from my side of the family thought my wife was worth saying goodbye to. And here's the twisted part. While I stood alone at her grave, I got a notification on my phone. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. My brother Jason had just posted a photo from his wedding reception. Him and his bride, smiling wide, champagne in hand, captioned, "The happiest day of our lives." The exact same hour my wife was being buried. That was the moment something inside me broke. Or maybe it didn't break, it hardened. Before I go further, let me say this. If you like true revenge stories that'll make your jaw drop, hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss the way this one unfolds, because trust me, it only gets darker from here. Anyway, my wife's name was Sarah. She wasn't just my partner. She was my best friend, my anchor. She had been battling a rare cancer for over a year, and I dropped everything to take care of her. Doctor visits, sleepless nights, endless meds, it didn't matter. I was there every step of the way, but my family? They didn't just avoid helping. They ridiculed me. "Stop being so dramatic, Alex," my mom told me once. "People die. It's not the end of the world." The end of the world? For me, it was. Sarah was my world. And yet, my parents acted like I was exaggerating, like I was just craving attention. Meanwhile, Jason, my golden boy brother, was busy planning his massive Instagram-worthy wedding. My family poured every ounce of energy, money, and support into his big day, while I was watching the love of my life fade away. The night Sarah took her last breath, I called my mom. I was shaking, crying, begging for her voice on the other end of the line. She declined the call. Minutes later, she posted a selfie on Facebook, smiling with a cocktail in her hand. Caption: "Best night ever. Do you know what it feels like to have your wife die in your arms while your family is clinking glasses somewhere else? I'll tell you, it feels like being erased. Like you don't mattered, the funeral. I stood there alone, numb, while strangers, Sarah's friends, her co-workers, hugged me, whispered condolences, cried with me. People who barely knew me showed more love than my own flesh and blood. And then, as if things couldn't get any worse, a week later I got a message from my parents that IT said, "We'll talk when you've calmed down. Don't ruin the family's happiness with your bitterness." Bitterness. That's what they called burying my wife alone. But they weren't done. A few days later, an envelope arrived in the mail. Inside were legal documents, papers asking me to sign away my rights to the family inheritance. They didn't even try to hide it. My wife wasn't even in the ground. For 2 weeks, and they were already trying to cut me out completely. That's when I knew. If they thought I was weak, if they thought I was broken beyond repair, they had no idea who they were dealing with. Because the truth was, I wasn't going to confront them. I wasn't going to scream or beg for their love anymore. No, I was going to bide my time, collect every little piece of dirt, every ugly word, every shameful act they thought they could hide. And when the moment was right, I'd let the whole world see who they really were, that I didn't need to destroy them. I'd just hand them the shovel. Growing up, I always knew I was the other son. The one who never shined quite bright enough, never loud enough, never convenient enough. My brother Jason was the golden child. He walked into a room and people lit up. Teachers loved him, coaches praised him, my parents, well, they worshipped him. Me? I was the shadow. The quiet kid who preferred books over football, honesty over charm, loyalty over show. And in my family, those things didn't count. That I'll never forget one Christmas when I was 10. I unwrapped my gift and found a plain sweater. Cheap, itchy, still with the clearance tag on it. Jason ripped open his box and found a brand new bike. My mom clapped her hands, my dad beamed with pride, and everyone rushed outside to watch Jason ride circles in the driveway. I sat alone in the living room, scratching at the sweater, trying not to cry. That was my childhood in one picture. As years passed, the favoritism only grew sharper. When Jason failed a class in high school, my parents hired a private tutor. When I got straight A's, they barely noticed. When Jason crashed his car at 18, my dad bought him a new one. When I worked double shifts just to buy my first used car, they told me I was irresponsible for wasting money. Jason became the heir to the family business almost by default. My father groomed him from day one, letting him sit in on meetings, teaching him how to be a leader. Meanwhile, I wasn't even invited to the conversation. "You're not cut out for this kind of responsibility," my dad said once. "You're too soft." Too soft. That's what they always called me. But Sarah never saw me that way. When I met her, she looked at me like I was enough. No, more than enough. She used to say, "You're the kind of man who doesn't need to stand in the spotlight to matter. You matter because you show up." She was the first person who made me believe I wasn't broken, I was just different, and my family hated her for that. They never said it outright, but I could feel it in every cold smile, every backhanded comment. "She's sweet, Alex," my mom once said, "but don't you think she's holding you back?" Holding me back? Sarah was the only reason I survived the weight of being invisible my whole life. When Sarah got sick, that's when the real ugliness surfaced. I begged my parents for help, rides to the hospital, maybe even just emotional support. Instead, they called me dramatic. They said I was exaggerating her illness to get attention. Jason even joked, "Maybe she's faking it for sympathy." That joke burned into me. I wanted to hit him, but Sarah squeezed my hand and whispered, "Don't. They'll only use it against you." So I swallowed the rage and focused on her. And here's the cruel irony. While Sarah was fighting for her life, Jason was fighting for the perfect wedding hashtag. My mom was glued to her phone, scrolling through bridal magazines, picking out decor, planning centerpieces, while my wife was hooked up to IVs that I remember walking into my parents' house one day, exhausted after a night at the hospital, hoping for some comfort. Instead, I found my mom, my dad, and Jason gathered around the dining table, laughing, surrounded by glossy wedding invitations. I told them Sarah's condition had worsened. The room went silent for a moment. My dad finally said, "Well, what do you expect us to do about it?" Then Jason chuckled and said, "Don't be such a buzzkill, man. Not today. Not today." Those two words stuck with me. They meant, your wife's suffering doesn't matter because it's inconvenient to our party. That was the day I realized something. This wasn't just neglect. This was cruelty dressed up as indifference. But I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I smiled, I nodded, and I walked away. On the outside, I was the soft son they'd always dismissed. But inside, I was starting to calculate, because if Jason and my parents thought they're perfect, little world was untouchable, they were about to find out just how fragile it really was. The last month of Sarah's life didn't feel like time. It felt like weather. Some days were a steady drizzle of fatigue. Others were full-on storms that shook the walls. I moved a mattress into the living room because our bedroom felt too far from the bathroom and too far from help. The monitor's soft beeps, the pill organizer with colors like a child's toy, the oxygen line tracing a gentle blue vein across the floor. That was our landscape. I learned to speak in numbers, milligrams, milliliters, oxygen saturation, minutes between doses. I learned to sleep sitting up, one sneaker on, in case I had to run. Hospice sent a nurse named Dana twice a week. She had the calm of someone who had walked into 100 homes like ours and knew where the light switches were. She showed me how to turn Sarah without hurting her, how to read the pain on her face when her voice was barely a whisper. One night, after Sarah drifted off, Dana asked if I had any help. I said, "We're fine." She looked around at the takeout containers and the stack of unpaid envelopes and said gently, "You're not." Then she left a list on the coffee table, support groups, meal trains, numbers I could call at 3 a.m. I tucked it under the remote like a secret. Work tried to be patient. My boss called to say I could switch to remote for a while. I lasted 3 days before my laptop became just another square object in a room full of machines I couldn't care about. I emailed my resignation at 2:14 a.m. after an episode where Sarah clawed at the sheets and said she was falling even though she was flat on the mattress. I typed 2 sentences, both true. "I can't do this. My wife needs me." People you barely know step up when the floor gives way. Our neighbor, Mrs. Kim, left a casserole on the porch every Thursday without ringing the bell. Sarah's coworker, Mark, mowed our lawn so quietly I didn't notice until the smell of cut grass pushed through the open window. A high school friend I hadn't spoken to in a decade Venmo'd me money with the note. No rules, just breathe. The world can be cruel, but sometimes it remembers you exist. And that contradiction hurts in a strange, good way. My family remembered me too, just not the way you'd expect. My mom left a voicemail I saved even though I hated it. Alex, you're catastrophizing. This is life. Don't make it harder than it has to be. My dad texted me an article about resilience with a thumbs up emoji like he was handing me a gym towel. Jason forwarded his wedding registry with a smiley and the line, "In case you want to contribute and feel included." I stared at that message for a full minute and imagined the phone cracking in my hand. Sarah noticed everything. Even on the days when speaking cost her, she still read my face like sheet music. "Hey," she would say, fingers finding mine under the blanket. "Don't go where I can't follow." I told her I was fine. She smiled, the tired kind that forgives your lie because it's trying to protect you too. That we had a rule. One honest conversation a day, even if it was only 5 minutes long. We talked about small things, the sweater she wanted me to donate because it scratched her neck, the ridiculous commercial with the talking dog, whether the houseplants looked happier on the windowsill. But sometimes the truth came barreling in, messy and inconvenient. One afternoon, the rain was so loud I thought the roof would peel back. Sarah said, "If I'm not here next spring, plant something wild. Not neat. I want chaos to be beautiful for once." I promised I would. I also promised I would live a real life, not a museum of our pain. A pastor from Sarah's church stopped by, a soft-spoken man with kind eyes and an umbrella that dripped all over the entryway. He didn't try to sell us answers. He read from a little worn book about mercy and left a note with a time and address for a grief group. "You won't need it yet," he said, "but one day you might need a room where your heartbreak makes sense to other people." After he left, Sarah squeezed my hand and whispered, "Make sure you find those people." I did what I could. I learned to time the meds with the alarm app, to change the sheets without jostling her, to count my breaths while waiting for hers to steady. At night, when the house felt like a held breath, I sat at the coffee table and sorted papers. Insurance, hospital bills, prescriptions, discharge summaries. Somewhere in that stack, a white envelope from my parents had slipped in, a notarized draft about estate planning clarification. I didn't open it then. I slid it under the pile and pressed my palm on top, like I could hold back the future. With skin and intention, there were good moments, brief and golden. A morning when Sarah wanted peaches and ate 3 slices and licked the juice from her thumb. A late night when the power flickered and we lit candles and her face looked like a photograph from before any of this began. She said, "If the lights go out forever, remember me like this." I told her I would remember every version, even the tired one, because love doesn't get to be picky. The final week was quieter. The storms turned to mist. Dana showed me how to keep Sarah comfortable, how to speak low and slow, how not to ask for promises a body can't keep. On the last night, Sarah asked me to open the window. The air was cool and smelled like rain and asphalt. "Do you hear it?" she whispered. I listened. Somewhere far away, a train. Closer, tires on wet pavement. Closest of all, the faint rise and fall of her chest. She said, "Thank you for staying." I said, "There was nowhere else to be." When it was over, the house sounded wrong, like a song with the drum track cut out. I sat in the quiet and held her wedding ring in my palm until it warmed. Then, I called the number Dana had circled on her list. I gave my name. I gave Sarah's. I gave the time. Grief is supposed to make you softer. For a while it did. But when the calls from my family started again, "Sign this. Don't be dramatic. Keep it together for Jason," something in me sharpened. Not rage, not exactly. More like clarity. I pulled the white envelope from the stack and finally opened it. Legal language, rehearsed and clean. The subtext was simple. Step aside, disappear, make room for the golden sun's neat story. That I set the papers down, washed my face, and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. I didn't see the other sun. I saw a man with nothing left to lose and one promise to keep: live a real life. Sometimes living means planting wild things. Sometimes it means pulling weeds by the root so they don't choke what's left. That I dried my hands, walked back to the table, and picked up a pen, not to sign, to take notes. If they wanted me to vanish, they were about to learn how loud a quiet man can be when the only thing he has left is the truth, The day after the funeral, I drove to my parents' house because texting felt like screaming into a canyon. The front door was unlocked, always is, and the citrus cleaner smell hit me the second I stepped in. Their laughter came from the kitchen. I followed the sound like a sleepwalker. They were at the island with matching mugs, the ones that say hashtag blessed in curly gold letters. My mom had her tablet propped up on a stand. On the screen was a slideshow, Jason dipping his bride, the sparklers, the drone shot above the vineyard. My dad tapped the screen to pause on a photo where Jason's tux caught the sunset and said, "This one belongs on the homepage." Homepage. Not album, not frame. My family has always loved optics more than people. They didn't notice me right away. My mom scrolled, paused, zoomed. "We need to bury the drama," she said, like she was choosing adjectives for a caption. No sad comments on the wedding posts. "It kills engagement." "Brand safety," my dad agreed. "Keep negativity off the grid. And if Alex reaches out, redirect him. Tell him we'll talk when he's rational." Rational. I finally cleared my throat. 3 heads snapped toward me, surprise melting into tight, annoyed patience. "Alex," my mom said, like my name was a spill on her counter. "You should have called." "I did," I said. "The night Sarah died." Silence. Then Jason leaned back on the stool and spread his hands like he was moderating a panel. "Look, man, timing is everything. We had a lot riding on this weekend. Sponsors, contracts. A cancellation would have been." He searched for the word and found one that made my chest go cold. Catastrophic. Sponsors, contracts. My wife's last night weighed against a brand deal. "I didn't ask you to." "Cancel," I said slowly. "I asked you to answer the phone." My mom put her mug down carefully, the porcelain kiss loud in the quiet. "You called at 1 in the morning, Alex. What did you expect us to do? We were in the middle of an event. You have to understand, people die. Life goes on." "Life went on," I said. "Without you." My dad's face didn't change. He has a boardroom expression he wears at dinner. "We're not getting into this. Emotions are high. Take time. Grieve constructively." Constructively. Like I could file my heartbreak as a spreadsheet. I looked at Jason. "You posted a kiss photo at the exact hour I was lowering Sarah into the ground." He shrugged. "Scheduled content. Not my fault the algorithm picked that time." I laughed. "Once, ugly, incredulous. Right? Not your fault. No one apologized. That detail matters." I didn't flip the table. I didn't shout. I reached into my jacket and set a small stack of envelopes on the island. The top one had the attorneys. Letterhead, my dad's favorite firm, asking for my signature to clarify estate expectations. Below it, a printout of a group text I wasn't meant to see. I'd been added by accident to the wedding ops thread weeks earlier, then quietly muted, as if invisibility were consent. In it, Jason had typed, "If Alex tries to bring hospital drama into the rehearsal, bounce him. Mom, please manage." My mom had replied with a thumbs up and the line, "He thrives on attention. Keep him off camera." My mom glanced at the papers and went sheet white for half a second before her face snapped back into polite frost. "Where did you get that?" "You added me," I said, "and forgot." Jason snorted. "That's not a good look, Mom." Then to me, with a little smirk, "You know you can't share private messages, right? Legal stuff." "I don't need to share private messages," I said. "Your public posts do plenty." I slid my phone across the counter and tapped through their greatest hits. The cocktail selfie at 12:07 a.m. with "best night ever." My dad's LinkedIn post about perseverance under pressure with a photo of him cutting a ribbon. The wedding countdown reels. The registry link with gifts that matter. I had screenshots, timestamps, captions. The internet is a diary that never forgets. My dad folded his arms. "What do you want, Alex? Money? Because if this is about inheritance, we can discuss. It's not about money," I said, and for the first time in months, my voice didn't shake. "It's about decency." Jason rolled his eyes. "Decency is subjective." "No," I said. "It's not." My mom's phone lit up. Across the lock screen flashed a preview from a group chat. "OMG, the funeral. Did anyone go?" She moved her hand fast to hide it, like she could tuck the world away. Too late. I'd already seen the thread name. Famcor. I picked up the attorney letter and tucked it back into my jacket. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "I'm going to leave. You're going to keep telling yourselves a version of this story where you're practical, and I'm Hysterical. And in a week, when your hangover wears off, you'll send me a text that says, "We'll talk when you cool down." You'll tell me not to ruin the family mood. You'll ask for my signature again. You'll expect me to vanish. Jason smirked. Predictive, he said. You always did like to write narratives. Yeah, I said. The difference now is that the truth writes itself. I walked out. On the way, I passed the hallway table with the family gallery. Jason's varsity photo, my parents on a cruise, me and Sarah on our wedding day. That last picture was tilted. Dust filmed across the glass. I fixed the frame, wiped the dust with my sleeve, and left it straight. I in the car. I didn't cry. I drove to a coffee shop because I needed a neutral room and fluorescent lights to keep me from sinking. I ordered a black coffee and took a seat by the wall outlet. Then I opened my laptop and started doing what my family had always told me I was good at. Details that I backed up everything. I downloaded every public post, every story highlight, every caption where they'd wrapped cruelty in a bow. I exported Sarah's medical timeline from the hospital portal, dates, appointment times, admissions, because facts matter when people call you dramatic. I pulled call logs, my unanswered calls, my mother's decline at 12:01 a.m., the cocktail selfie. At 12:07, I saved the voicemail where my mom told me to stop catastrophizing. I typed out a transcript word for word. I created a folder labeled optics and another labeled receipts. Then I set up a timeline that could speak for me even when I didn't want it. I didn't plan to blast anything online. Not yet. Revenge for the sake of noise is just more noise. I wanted precision. I wanted the mask to slip when everyone was watching. So I made a list of audiences. Not followers, people. My aunt in Ohio who believes my mother can do no wrong. The cousins who worship Jason like he invented the wheel. The golf buddies who think my dad is integrity in loafers. The vendors tagged in the wedding posts. The vineyard, the event planner, the boutique that lent the dress in exchange for exposure. The investors who read my father's LinkedIn like scripture. If truth was a spotlight, I would aim it carefully. My phone buzzed. A new message from my mom. Right on schedule. We'll talk when you calm down. Don't bring negativity to the family. And then, a separate email from their attorney marked time sensitive. I stared at the screen, and for the first time since Sarah's last night, I smiled. Not because I was happy, because the script was unfolding exactly as predicted. And that meant I could stop reacting and start directing. I closed the laptop, finished the coffee, and headed home. On the porch, beneath the wind chimes Sarah loved, I wrote a single sentence on a yellow legal pad. Let them hand you the shovel. Underneath it, I started drafting a plan, not to scream, not to burn, but to open the curtains and invite the sun in. Sunlight is cruel to things that only look clean in the dark. I spent the next week in silence. Not the numb kind that pressed down after Sarah passed. This was sharp, deliberate silence. Every word I didn't say became fuel. Every document I saved, every screenshot I tucked away, was another piece on the board. The first thing I did was buy a brand new external hard drive. I labeled it Family Album with a strip of masking tape, knowing the irony would sting later. Inside it, I created folders so neat my father would have been proud. Medical timeline, ignored calls, social posts, legal pressure, wedding operations. Each file wasn't just evidence. It was a story. Together, they told the truth no amount of polished Instagram captions could hide. Then came the second step, allies. See, my family always underestimated me because I never played their game out loud. They thought silence was weakness. What they didn't realize was that silence is the best way to listen. And when you listen long enough, you learn where the cracks are. I started with relatives who had always lingered on the edges. My Aunt Linda, who once admitted she felt overshadowed by my mom's perfect family act. A casual message, did you know nobody from our side showed up at Sarah's funeral? She replied in less than 3 minutes. What? That can't be true. I didn't argue. I just dropped a photo of the empty funeral home chairs, timestamp included. Then I waited up by the end of the day. Linda had called me twice, voice shaking. I never knew it was that bad, she whispered. They told us you wanted a private ceremony. Private. That was the lie my parents fed them to cover their absence. And suddenly, the first crack widened. Next was Mark, Sarah's co-worker who had mowed our lawn all summer. I thanked him again, casually mentioned how my parents had never visited, and he swore under his breath. If people knew how they treated her, he said, Well, maybe they should. That was the seed I needed that I didn't blast anything online. Not yet. Instead, I started building small circles of truth, sharing pieces of the puzzle with people who already suspected my family wasn't as flawless as they pretended. Every time, I let the facts do the talking. No rants, no accusations, just receipts, and people listened. Because the truth, when delivered quietly, sounds louder than the loudest lie. Meanwhile, my parents kept sending letters. Jason kept posting wedding content, oblivious that the walls were starting to close in. In one video, he bragged about how family always comes first while holding his new wife's hand. I saved it instantly. One night, scrolling through his feed, I noticed something, a tag. The vineyard where they held the wedding had reshared the video. My stomach flipped. Because now his perfect little performance wasn't just personal, it was tied to businesses, contracts, sponsorships. Their reputation was collateral, and I held the receipts, but I wasn't reckless. This wasn't about revenge in a blaze of fury. It was about precision. Timing up. I mapped it out. Step 1. Gather undeniable proof. Step 2. Let whispers start inside the family. Step 3. Expand outward, carefully, until the facade crumbles under its own weight. And then came the moment I didn't expect. Late one evening, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was Jason's bride. She wrote, "I don't know what's going on between you and your family, but things aren't adding up. Jason told me you skipped your wife's funeral because you were too depressed to handle it. That doesn't sound right. Please tell me the truth." I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. So Jason wasn't just lying to cover their cruelty. He was rewriting history to his own wife that I typed back slowly. I didn't skip anything. I buried Sarah alone. Your husband was dancing that night. Then I sent the photo of the empty chapel. Her response came 5 minutes later. Oh my God. And then nothing. That silence told me more than words ever could. Because if Jason's own wife was doubting him, it meant the facade was already cracking from the inside. The next morning, I woke to 3 missed calls from my mom and 1 from Jason. No voicemails, just attempts. They were starting to feel the shift. Starting to realize control was slipping. I made coffee, sat at the table with my yellow legal pad, and wrote another line under my mantra. They gave you the shovel. Don't rush. Make them dig. Because now, the game wasn't about me exposing them. It was about them exposing themselves. All I had to do was give the truth room to breathe. And the truth, once it starts breathing, doesn't stop. The first domino didn't fall with a bang. It tipped with a whisper. That's how I knew the plan was working. I started small. Aunt Linda called again, this time with her voice tight and urgent. Your mother told me you didn't want us there, Alex. She said Sarah asked for privacy. Sarah begged for company. I told her flatly. Then I emailed her the hospital's visitation log, pages and pages of visitors. Friends, neighbors, co-workers, no family. The column under family visits was blank from top to bottom. Linda cried on the phone. And then she promised me something. I'll make sure people know the truth. I didn't tell her how far that truth was about to travel. I didn't need to. Next, I turned my attention to the business. My father had built his reputation on being a man of integrity, which sounds impressive in speeches but crumbles when you shine light on the rot. I knew the company's board of directors. They were family friends, investors, men in golf polos who toasted my father's unshakable values. They also loved gossip. And gossip backed by receipts? That was currency. I drafted an anonymous packet. Inside, a timeline of events. Dates of Sarah's hospital stays. Screenshots of my unanswered calls. Jason's wedding photos timestamped during her funeral. My parents' text dismissing me as negative energy. At the top of the packet, I wrote in plain black ink. Is this the leadership you invest in? No signature. No return address. Just truth. Wrapped in brown envelope paper that I mailed 5 copies. 3 days later, my father called. Not to apologize, but to demand. Alex, did you send something to the board? His voice was pure fury masked as control. I let a beat of silence hang before answering. What do you think I sent? Don't play games with me, he snapped. You're jeopardizing everything. That word, jeopardizing, made me laugh. You mean I'm showing them who you really are? He hung up on me. 10 minutes later, I got a text from Jason. You crossed a line. Stay out of our business. Our business. That told me exactly how deep Jason's claws were in the company. He wasn't just the golden son at home. He was inheriting everything. But I wasn't done. Remember the vineyard that had reshared Jason's wedding video? I sent them a message from a throwaway email, a photo of Sarah's obituary next to a screenshot of Jason's champagne toast, same date, same time. The subject line, "This is the wedding you're promoting." No commentary, just fact. Within 48 hours, the vineyard quietly removed Jason's wedding video from their feed. A small thing, but symbolic. The golden image was already losing shine. And then came the real spark. Jason's bride reached out again. This time, her message wasn't tentative, it was frantic. "Alex, people are asking questions. Vendors are contacting me. My friends keep sending me screenshots. What is happening?" I told her the truth, simply. The mask is slipping. You can either ask Jason for the real story, or you can keep living in the fairy tale. But you deserve to know who you married. She didn't reply right away. But the next morning, Jason's Instagram went private. That silence was louder than any argument. The first cracks were widening. Whispers were spreading in the family group chats. My father's investors were asking clarifying questions. Jason's wife was starting to doubt him publicly. And all of it happened without me raising my voice once I sat on the porch that evening. The same wind chimes Sarah loved swaying in the breeze, and wrote a new line under my mantra. Don't strike the mask. Let it peel off on its own. Because the beauty of truth is that once it escapes, you can't shove it back into the dark. And my family's perfect little empire? It was already starting to suffocate on its own lies. It started with whispers, but now it was time for echoes. Quiet truths had done their job. The cracks were visible. Now I wanted the sound to carry. The first target wasn't random, it was personal. My father's business had a reputation for being a family-first company. The kind that posted holiday photos of employees with captions about loyalty and integrity. I still had access to the company's email newsletter. Years ago, when I briefly worked there before they shoved me out, I'd set up the system. They never bothered to revoke my credentials. I drafted a short message under the subject line. A family that forgets its own. Attached were 3 images. A screenshot of my mother's cocktail selfie, timestamped the night Sarah died. A photo of the empty funeral home. Rows of unoccupied chairs, Jason's grinning wedding post, champagne in hand, posted at the exact hour of Sarah's burial, and no commentary. No venom, just a single sentence beneath. Integrity isn't about speeches. It's about where you stand, when it matters most. I scheduled the email for Friday morning, prime reading time. Then I logged out. The fallout was instant. By noon, my phone lit up with messages. An ex-colleague texted, "Holy hell, is this real?" Another, "Your dad's in damage control mode." The board is panicking. My father's carefully polished LinkedIn post about leadership values had been flooded with comments. Some sympathetic, some sharp as knives. The mask was slipping, publicly now, but I wasn't finished. Step 2 was the wedding vendors. Jason had leaned hard on exposure deals. The florist, the dress boutique, even the band had tagged him, building their portfolios around his perfect day. I created another throwaway account, sent each vendor a package of receipts, and asked a single question. "Do you want your brand associated with this?" One by one, the tags disappeared. Jason's wedding highlight reel, once glossy and crowded, with credits, turned bare. The boutique deleted his photos entirely. The florist quietly unfollowed him. The band removed him from their testimonials. Without his sponsors, Jason looked less like an icon and more like a man playing dress-up. And then came the family circle. My cousin Emily had always been glued to Instagram, idolizing Jason. I knew if she got the truth, she wouldn't sit on it. She'd explode. So I sent her the hospital logs, the funeral photos, the text where my mom said, "Don't ruin the family mood." An hour later, she posted a cryptic story. "Sometimes the golden boy is fool's gold." I laughed for the first time in months. Not a cruel laugh, more like relief. Because for once, someone else was carrying the weight. By Sunday, my parents called me. Not the cold, clipped tones I was used to. This time, my mom's voice wavered. "Alex, please. People are talking. We need to present a united front." I let her words hang in the air. Then I asked, where was that united front when Sarah needed it? She didn't answer. That night, Jason texted me directly. "This isn't over. You're ruining lives. And I typed back the only honest thing left to say. No, Jason, you ruined your own. I'm just holding up the mirror. I closed my phone, sat back, and wrote another line on the yellow pad. Truth doesn't destroy reputations. Lies do. And for the first time, I felt it. Not just the satisfaction of revenge, but the quiet sense of justice. Because this wasn't about tearing them down anymore. It was about making sure Sarah's memory wasn't buried with her by the time the second week hit. It wasn't whispers anymore. It was headlines that IT started small. A local business blog ran a piece titled Family, Values, or PR Stunt. Questions arise about father's company name. They didn't mention Sarah by name, but the timing, the screenshots, the anonymous insider packets. It was clear. The story was spreading. Within hours, the article was reshared on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Some comments were savage. Integrity my ass. Guy posts about leadership while skipping his daughter-in-law's funeral. If this is how they treat family, how do they treat employees? The more my dad tried to post polished, corporate rebuttals, the worse it looked. Every attempt at control came off like spin, and spin only makes fire spread. Jason, meanwhile, was unraveling. His Instagram went private, then public again, then private once more. His new wife's account stayed silent. No wedding photos, no captions, just a blank space where her dream day had been. People noticed. They speculated. Screenshots flew. One night, I got a text from Mark, Sarah's coworker, the guy who had quietly mowed our lawn when nobody else would. Hey man, just so you know, your story's out there. People are talking about Sarah, about what she went through. They're angry for you. For her. That hit different. For the first time, it wasn't about my family falling. It was about Sarah's truth rising. But my parents didn't see it that way. They saw me as the problem. My mom showed up at my door unannounced. Hair perfect, pearls in place, but her face drawn tight. Alex, she said the second I opened the door, you need to stop this circus. Do you have any idea what you're doing to this family? I let her talk. She went on about reputation, about the legacy my father built, about Jason's future. Not once did she mention Sarah's name. Not once did she say sorry. When she finally stopped, I asked one question. When Sarah was dying, and I begged you to be there, why did you ignore me? She flinched, just for a second. Then, her lips pressed into that same thin smile she used when she wanted to end a conversation. You were always too emotional, she said softly. Always making things harder than they had to be. I almost laughed. Almost. Because in that moment, I realized she would never see it. Not the truth. Not the cruelty. She was too deep in the mask to recognize her own face. Then let the mask burn, I told her. And I closed the door. The very next day, Jason's wife made her move. She deleted every wedding photo from her feed. Her bio went from Mrs. Jason, last name, to just her first name with a single sunflower emoji. People noticed. They always do. And they started asking questions Jason couldn't answer. Friday, my father's company issued an official statement. It was corporate nonsense about misunderstandings and unfortunate miscommunications. But the damage was done. Their board members started pulling support. Vendors were backing out. And Jason? He was drowning in rumors about why his wife wasn't posting, why sponsors were cutting ties, why his perfect day had vanished from the internet that I didn't post a single word publicly. I didn't have to. The truth was doing all the work. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, yellow pad in front of me, and wrote the next line. Revenge isn't shouting in the streets. It's letting silence echo louder than lies. For the first time, I felt calm. Because the facade was collapsing, not by my hand, but by theirs. All I'd done was pull back the curtain. And behind it, the perfect family didn't look perfect at all. The collapse wasn't gradual anymore. It was an avalanche. By the third week, Jason's wedding was officially canceled in every way that mattered. His wife, ex-wife now, technically, filed for annulment. Quietly, but not quietly enough. Court documents have a way of leaking when the internet smells blood. People screenshotted, speculated, dissected every line. My father's company was bleeding too. 2 major investors pulled out. 1 board member resigned. Local news picked up the story with a headline that made me laugh out loud. Golden Family. Tarnished by ugly truth. It wasn't clever, but it was accurate. And then came the night they showed up. I was at home, sitting on the porch under Sarah's wind chimes, when headlights cut across the yard. A black SUV. Then another car behind it. My stomach tightened. I knew who it was before they even stepped out. My parents. Jason. All three of them. Standing in the driveway like they were staging an intervention. My dad in his blazer, my mom clutching her pearls. Jason looking hollow without the Instagram shine. I didn't move at first. Let them come to me. Alex, my dad started, voice too smooth, too rehearsed. We need to talk. As a family. Family. That word almost made me laugh. But I didn't. I let him keep going. He talked about damage, control, about how the narrative had gotten away from them, about how we needed to present a united front. My mom nodded along, eyes darting like a bird trapped in a cage. Jason just stared at me, jaw tight, like if he clenched hard enough, the world would snap back into place. Finally, my mom spoke. Please, Alex. We can fix this. Just stop. Stop sending things. Stop digging. Let us move forward. I stood up slowly, walked to the edge of the porch, looked at all three of them under the porch light, masks cracked, desperation bleeding through. I didn't send lies, I said calmly. I didn't invent stories. All I did was show people the truth. You dug this hole yourselves. I just handed you the shovel. Jason snapped then, his voice sharp. You've ruined everything. My marriage, my career, Sarah's gone. I cut him off. That's what ruined everything. And you toasted champagne while she took her last breath. His mouth opened, then closed. No defense. No clever comeback. Just silence. My dad finally dropped the mask. His voice hardened. What do you want? Alex? Money? Shares of the business? Is that it? What will make this stop? And that was the moment I realized. They still didn't get it. They thought this was about leverage. About payouts. About me clawing back what they tried to steal. They couldn't fathom that it wasn't about inheritance. It was about justice. I don't want your money, I said. I don't want your company. I don't want anything from you. I let the words settle. My mom's face crumpled just slightly. Jason shifted on his feet. My dad's jaw flexed. What I want, I finished, is for you to live with the truth. Every single day. To know the world sees you the way I've always seen you. Hollow. Cruel. Pretending to be perfect while rotting underneath. None of them spoke. Not for a long time. The only sound was the wind chimes, soft, eerie, like Sarah was still with me. Finally, my mom whispered, Please, you can't cut us out like this. We're still your family. I shook my head. No. Sarah was my family, and you abandoned her. The rest of you stopped being my family a long time ago. I turned, walked inside, and shut the door. Their muffled voices carried for a minute, then silence. When I finally looked outside, the driveway was empty, for the first time in years. I felt no weight on my chest. No fear. No need to prove myself. They had begged for mercy, and I had given them none. Not out of cruelty, out of justice. Because some debts can't be erased. And as I sat back down under Sarah's wind chimes, I knew this was the end of their story, and the beginning of mine. After that night, I never heard from them again. No more letters from attorneys. No more calls. No more surprise visits in the driveway. It was like they'd finally realized there was nothing left to take from me, and nothing left I wanted from them. And that silence? It was freedom. I poured myself into rebuilding. The first step was keeping the promise I made to Sarah. In the spring, I planted wildflowers in the yard. Not neat rows. Not something you'd see on the cover of a gardening magazine. Chaos. Beautiful chaos. Just the way she asked for. And when they bloomed, bright and unruly, it felt like Sarah was there, reminding me that life doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. I joined that grief support group the pastor had once suggested. At first, I sat in the back, silent, arms crossed. But slowly, I started talking, then listening, then laughing. Real laughter I thought I'd buried with Sarah. Those people became my new family, not bound by blood, but by something stronger. Understanding. I even started working again. Not in my father's company, not in some place where I'd always be compared to Jason. I found a nonprofit that helped families dealing with terminal illness. The irony wasn't lost on me. Helping others survive the storm I'd barely weathered myself. But it felt right. It felt real, and the best part? I no longer cared what my parents or Jason were doing. Whether they crawled out of the hole or stayed buried, it wasn't my problem. Their empire had collapsed, their image shattered, and I didn't have to lift a finger anymore. Because the sweetest revenge wasn't their downfall. It was my survival, my happiness, my freedom. Now, I wake up every morning, sip my coffee on the porch under Sarah's wind chimes, and watch those wildflowers dance in the wind. And for the first time in a long time, I can breathe. They gave me the shovel, and I let them dig their own graves. I didn't destroy them, they destroyed themselves. All I did was refuse to bury myself alongside them. So what do you think? Did I do the right thing? What would you have done in my place? Make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Because trust me, there are plenty more stories like this one you don't want to miss. Bye-bye.